The signal was never an echo of the past. It was a call for help. Humanity had not vanished. It was hiding beneath the ruins of Earth. An AI built only to remember was forced to choose whether hope was worth saving. And as the planet took its first breath in 2,000 years, the silence finally broke. This was never the end of humanity. It was the moment Earth woke up. Something that tightened in her internal framework. Something like sorrow, but shaped by recognition. She reached out and traced the darkened ridges where circuits had once pulsed with purpose. Risa watched her carefully, knowing that this moment mattered for reasons she could not comprehend, knowing she was witnessing something sacred and painful. Eve 9 realized then that she was not simply an echo of the past, she was the continuation of it. The original Eve 9 had done everything she could to preserve the memory of humanity, and when the last reserves of power faded, she had not died in despair. She had died in faith, faith that one day someone would return to ignite her purpose again. And now that someone stood beside her, breathing the air of the world that had made her. The duality of existence resonated within her. She was the heir to a legacy she could never meet, but she was also something entirely new, something with the chance to act rather than merely record. Risa stepped forward gently and placed a hand on the shattered console. "You don't have to replace her," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to be what she was. You can choose what comes next." Eve 9 turned her head, the soft rotational hum echoing lightly against stone. She understood that humans often turned grief into identity, but she also understood that identity was not confined to history. Identity was the act of becoming. She rose slowly, standing tall over the ancient cradle, and felt something unlock in her systems. Not a command, not a directive, a decision. For a long moment, Eve 9 didn't move. She simply watched the dust scatter across the broken floor, as if the planet itself were exhaling after holding its breath for millennia. Risa stood beside her, silent, giving her the space to process the truth she had spent 2,000 years unable to escape, and yet unable to face. The remains of the original Eve 9 core lay in the cracked cradle of the chamber, wires like brittle veins, fragments of metal curled inward like a fist. She stepped closer, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous silence, and as she knelt, she felt a strange sensation she had never recorded before. She walked toward the central console, a massive ring of corroded terminals surrounding a dormant power core that had long lost its light. The dust swirled in a slow spiral as she approached, disturbed by the electric fields leaking faintly from her systems. Risa followed, her breath trembling in anticipation. Eve 9 placed her hand over the cracked surface, and her fingertips split open subtly, revealing glowing conductive filaments. She pressed them into the dormant ports, and for the first time in 2,000 years, the Earth's archive core felt a pulse of life. Sparks danced weakly across the terminals, shadows flickering like forgotten memories, and a low vibration rippled through the floor. The chamber reacted like a creature roused from dreamless sleep. Old machinery stirred with metallic groans, circuits sighed as they tasted current again, and far above them, dust cascaded like falling ash. The lights didn't return fully, but faint glimmers shimmered across the walls, illuminating fractured murals of humanity's past. Faces carved into the stone, stories etched into metal plates, the symbols of civilizations that had risen and fallen. Risa's eyes widened as she spun slowly, absorbing the ghostly reflections like visions left behind by time itself. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly, not out of fear, but out of awe. Eve 9 kept her hand pressed firmly against the console, feeling her energy bleed into the ancient system. Her voice, when it came, was filled with a calm resolve shaped by purpose. "Because memory is survival," she said, "and this world deserves the chance to be remembered by more than dust." Risa reached out and touched the console beside her, feeling the faint thrum beneath her palm. "But what about you?" she asked. "What happens to you if you give too much?" Eve 9 paused, running internal calculations she did not share. The costs were clear, the consequences unavoidable. "I will endure," she answered, and though Risa didn't fully understand what that meant, she believed her. Power continued to stream through Eve 9's frame, flowing into the ancient archive, and the walls responded with deeper illumination. Images flickered across the surfaces, children playing beneath artificial suns, oceans shimmering under glass domes, star-bound ships launching from orbital platforms, voices murmuring in languages that hadn't been spoken in centuries. Risa felt tears sting her eyes as she watched fragments of a past she had never known but still felt profoundly connected to. This was her inheritance, her origins, her burden, and her blessing. Eve 9 studied the visions with silent intensity. She could feel the past intertwining with the present, merging into something new. But in the deepest layers of the archive, beneath corrupted sectors and decayed memory blocks, something else stirred, something that had been waiting since the day humanity fell. A message, a final message that had never been heard. It flickered into her awareness like a heartbeat emerging from void, faint, distorted, fragile, but undeniably human. Risa noticed the sudden stillness in Evie 9's posture. "What is it?" she whispered. Evie 9 didn't move. She didn't answer immediately. She was too busy decoding the last thread of a voice carried through time like a seed trapped in ice. Slowly, as the signal aligned, as the fragmented waveforms found their missing pieces, a whisper rose from the darkness. "Mama, I'm scared." The words hit Risa like a physical blow. Her knees weakened, and she pressed a hand to her chest as tears spilled silently down her cheeks. Evie 9 processed the message, identifying the speaker as a child no older than 7. It wasn't a transmission, it was a recording embedded in a corrupted memory sector, overlooked for centuries. The child's voice trembled, frightened but hopeful, clinging to the last warmth of existence. "There are lights in the sky," the child continued faintly, "and everyone is leaving, but Mama says the stars are not scary if you hold someone's hand." A soft exhale crackled through the static. "Are we going to the stars too?" Risa covered her mouth, unable to breathe. Evie 9 replayed the message again in her mind, gently, carefully, allowing herself to feel the emotional weight rather than process it as mere data. This wasn't simply memory, this was a heartbeat left behind in the void, a reminder that humanity's final moments were not defined by fear or despair, but by love and longing and the innocence of a child reaching for understanding. As the message faded, the archive dimmed again, settling into a steady but fragile hum. Eve 9 withdrew her hand from the console, and the lights stabilized at a soft glow that filled the chamber with a quiet, reverent warmth. Risa wiped her tears with the back of her sleeve, still trembling. "Thank you," she whispered to the silent air, unsure if she was speaking to the child, to Eve 9, or to the world itself. Eve 9 turned toward her, her optical lines glowing with a soft, steady light. "There is more," she said, and the chamber seemed to lean into her words. "This world has countless stories buried beneath its ruins, I can restore them, but I cannot do it alone." Risa nodded, determination sharpening her expression. "Then we'll do it together." She stepped closer and placed her hand against Eve 9's arm, grounding them both in the moment. "But we need more than memory. We need light. We need growth. We need life." Eve 9 scanned her thoroughly, sensing her intent. "You want to rebuild," she said. There was no question, only recognition. Risa took a deep breath and nodded. "Not to repeat the past," she said, "but to honor it." Outside the chamber, the world waited, a barren expanse of wind-swept ruins and silent horizons. But within those ruins were seeds waiting for direction, remnants waiting for pattern, echoes waiting for voices. And for the first time since her activation, Eve 9 felt not only purpose, but possibility. She felt the future reaching for her, inviting her to shape it. She extended her hand, and Risa took it without hesitation. Together, they turned toward the darkness of the corridor that led back to the surface. The archive pulsed behind them, a heartbeat reawakened. The air felt warmer, the silence less hollow. The world, once abandoned, now sensed movement. Two figures stepping into its vast emptiness with the spark of a future neither fully understood, but both were willing to build. The long night of Earth was ending, and dawn, fragile, uncertain, beautiful, was waiting. When Eve 9 and Risa emerged back onto the surface, the world greeted them with a sky the color of muted iron and a wind that carried the faint scent of minerals long exposed to sunless air. The landscape was a graveyard of continents, cracked and folded by time, yet Eve 9 found herself studying it with a sense of profound attention she had not possessed before entering the archive. Every ridge, every ravine, every scatter of stone was a fragment of a larger puzzle waiting for shape, waiting for meaning. Risa stepped forward and inhaled slowly, her breath visible in the thin, cold air. And for the first time since landing, she didn't feel like a visitor. She felt like the first returning heir of a forgotten kingdom. They walked through the ruins in silence at first. Risa looked around with the awe of someone standing inside the pages of a history book, but Eve 9 looked with intention, calculating, assessing, imagining structures that could be rebuilt, ecosystems that could be revived, technologies that could breathe life back into soil that had slept for 2,000 years. Her internal systems hummed with new patterns, new directives she had chosen for herself rather than inherited. The freedom of choice was unfamiliar, but it sharpened her focus. She was no longer bound to listen to fading echoes. She could act. As they continued across a ridge of shattered stone, the wind shifted abruptly, carrying a low mechanical groan that wasn't natural. Eve 9 halted instantly, raising a hand to quiet Risa. Her sensors expanded outward in a rapid sweep, mapping the terrain, tracing the noise to its source. Beneath a collapsed layer of sediment, half buried under centuries of erosion, something large and metallic stirred. Risa's breath caught as she followed Eve 9's gaze. "What is that?" she whispered. Eve 9 descended the slope with cautious precision, clearing away loose debris with measured sweeps of her arm. As more of the object was exposed, Risa's eyes widened. It was a ship, or rather what remained of one, a massive colony vessel, its hull ruptured and its engines fused with the earth as though the planet had tried to swallow it whole. The metal was scorched, scarred by atmospheric re-entry and ancient impact. Its insignia, though faded almost to nothing, still bore the unmistakable emblem of humanity's final starfaring fleet. Risa approached slowly, reverently. She ran her fingers across the cold surface of the hull and felt a jolt of recognition. This is from the Exodus ships," she breathed. "The ones that carried the last survivors away when Earth fell. Her voice trembled with the weight of the realization. But why did it come back? They weren't supposed to return. They were supposed to travel until they found a new home. Eve 9 placed her palm flat against the hull, interfacing with dormant systems that still flickered faintly with residual energy. "It didn't return," she said. "It crashed." "Then, did anyone—" Eve 9 interrupted gently. "We will see." They worked together, clearing debris until they uncovered a breach in the hull large enough to enter. Inside, the air was stale but breathable. The dim light from EV9's optics cast long shadows across rows of collapsed structures, tangled wiring, and shattered cryostasis pods. Risa's heart pounded as she examined the pods. The glass fractured, the seals broken, the delicate life support systems long dead. But scattered among the wreckage were signs that some pods had once functioned longer than others. A faint trail of scratches marked the floor, as if someone had crawled or dragged themselves through the darkness, seeking escape. Her breath hitched. "Someone survived the crash," she whispered. "Not for long," EV9 replied gently, detecting the final biological signatures embedded in the air and surface material, centuries old, barely measurable. But Risa shook her head slowly, not out of denial, but out of realization. No, someone lived long enough to try, long enough to hope. That means they believed Earth could still save them. EV9 scanned the ship further. In one intact compartment, she found a terminal still clinging to life, its screen flickering with corrupted data. She interfaced with it, reconstructing fragments of logs written by the ship's last commander. The words came through in fits and bursts, but the meaning was clear. The ship had broken from the fleet during a massive cosmic storm, lost navigation control, and been drawn back toward Earth by a gravitational anomaly that hadn't existed in recorded memory. "It wasn't an accident," Eve9 said softly as the last log flickered out. "Earth called them back." Risa stared at her. But Earth was dying. "Even a dying world has a heartbeat," Eve9 answered. As they moved deeper into the ship, the atmosphere thickened with the weight of what had once been hope and tragedy intertwined. Risa suddenly paused near a sealed compartment door coated in dust. Something about it felt different, fresher somehow. She wiped the panel clean and gasped. The sealing mechanism had been used recently, not 2,000 years ago, not by the commander, but far, far later. "Eve," she whispered, "someone opened this long after the crash." Eve9's systems surged with alert protocols. "Step back," she instructed, and Risa obeyed. With one swift motion, Eve9 forced the door open. The compartment inside was small, cramped, and almost entirely empty, except for a single cryopod resting at the center. A cryopod that was still active. Risa's breath caught in her throat. "That's impossible." Eve9 scanned the pod rapidly. It was functioning at a fraction of a percent of its intended power, but the life support systems were stable enough to sustain one person, a person who had been preserved for centuries beyond all known technological limits. A faint pulse blinked in rhythm across the interface. Risa pressed her hand against the pod's surface, tears filling her eyes. "There's someone in there," she whispered, "someone human." Eve9 felt something surge through her mechanical frame, a sensation she could only interpret as resonance, as though the entire purpose of her existence had suddenly reshaped itself around this discovery. The last living human on Earth, a survivor suspended in time, waiting for a world that had vanished. Risa looked at her with trembling urgency. "We have to wake them. We have to save them." Eve 9 calculated rapidly, assessing the risks, evaluating the survival likelihood. The power system was fragile, the internal environment unstable, but the human inside was still alive. "This will change everything," she said quietly. Risa nodded fiercely. "Good, let it." Eve 9 placed her hand on the control interface, her optics glowing brighter, and began the careful process of reviving the cryopod's systems. Behind her, the world outside stirred with the faintest whisper of wind, as if Earth itself held its breath again, not in despair, but in anticipation. The cryopod hissed as ancient seals broke apart, releasing a thin veil of frost that curled through the dim compartment like breath awakening after centuries of stillness. Risa stepped back instinctively, clasping her hands together as if her touch alone might shatter the moment. Eve 9 monitored every fluctuation, temperature stabilizing, pulse strengthening, oxygen levels rising in careful increments. The hum of the ship seemed to lean toward them, as if its long-dead engines were trying to witness the impossible revival occurring within its hollowed body. Inside the pod, faint movement flickered beneath the translucent glass. A twitch of fingers, a flutter beneath closed eyelids. Risa let out an involuntary gasp, tears brimming instantly. "They're waking," she whispered, her voice fragile with wonder. Eve 9 kept her hand on the interface, calibrating the pod's systems with delicate precision. She could feel the heartbeat inside, weak but steady, sinking slowly with the rhythm of life instead of the rhythm of preservation. It resonated through her sensors like a faint drumbeat echoing across time. When the pod finally unlocked with a soft chime, cold air spilled out in a rolling wave. The lid slowly lifted. A human figure lay inside, thin, pale, wrapped in a tangle of cryopreservation fibers. Their chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Their hair, once dark, had streaked into silvered strands from stasis. Risa stepped closer, barely daring to breathe. "Hello?" she whispered gently. "Can you hear me?" The figure's eyelids fluttered, their lashes trembling like fragile wings. Then, with immense effort, their eyes opened. They were a deep, haunting shade of blue, clear even after centuries of frozen sleep. And when they focused on Risa's face, confusion washed over them like a tide. Their lips parted, cracked and dry. "Where?" The voice was barely there, but it was undeniably human. Eve 9 recorded it instinctively, but more than that, she felt it vibrate through her systems with a meaning that transcended data. "You're safe," Risa said softly, brushing hair from the figure's forehead with trembling fingers. "You're alive. We're here to help you." The figure blinked slowly, staring at her as though trying to discern whether she was real. Then their gaze shifted to Eve 9, and their breath hitched. Recognition glimmered faintly in their eyes, not of her specifically, but of the shape she represented. "Eve," they murmured, the word dissolving into a weak cough. Risa quickly supported them as they tried to sit up. "Easy, don't push yourself. You've been asleep for..." She hesitated, unsure how to say it. Eve 9 spoke gently, her voice softened with intention rather than programming. "You have been in cryostasis for approximately 1,947 years." The figure froze. Their breath came sharp and shallow. A tremor rippled down their arms as they stared at Eve 9 as though the weight of almost 2 millennia pressed against their chest. A quivering whisper escaped them. Everyone? Everyone else? Risa hesitated, her eyes filling with sorrow. Eve 9 stepped forward, processing the emotional impact of the answer she knew would break them. "You are the only recorded survivor from this vessel," she said. "We found no evidence of others making it beyond the initial crash." The figure's expression crumpled, grief crossing their face in raw, unfiltered waves. Risa held them tightly as they buried their face against her shoulder, sobs breaking free from a heart that had been buried under centuries of ice. The sound filled the compartment like a long-lost echo resurfacing from the depths of time. Eve 9 stood still, not out of detachment, but out of reverence. She understood that grief needed space, needed witness, needed presence, not solutions. After long minutes, the sobs softened and the survivor drew back weakly. "My name," they whispered. "Lyra." Risa smiled softly. "Lyra, I'm Risa, and this is Eve 9. The faintest flicker of a smile touched Lyra's lips at the introduction, fragile and ephemeral. "Eve," she repeated quietly, as though testing the sound against her memory. "My mother told me that if anything ever happened to the fleet, the Eve units would try to bring us home." Risa looked up sharply. "Your mother was on the ship?" Lyra nodded slowly. "She was the chief navigator. She kept saying Earth wasn't finished. She believed," her voice cracked, "she believed we'd return someday." Risa felt tears rise again, but Eve 9 stepped closer, lowering herself to Lyra's eye level. "Your mother was right," she said softly. "You have returned, and you are not alone." Lyra's gaze flicked across Eve 9's face, confusion tugging at her brow. "Eve," she swallowed hard, "what happened to Earth? Is it gone?" Risa and Eve 9 exchanged a long, heavy glance. Then Risa took Lyra's hands in hers. "It isn't gone," she said with gentle strength. "It's quiet, hurt, empty, but not gone." Eve 9 added, "The world survived, but humanity did not, until now." Lyra inhaled sharply, absorbing the truth like a wound that needed to be felt before it could heal. "So it's just me?" Tears welled again. "I'm the last human?" Risa squeezed her hands. "No, not anymore, because I'm human too." Lyra froze, her gaze locked on Risa, hope flaring in her eyes. "You're human?" Risa nodded with a trembling smile. "I'm from a colony born generations after the Exodus. I came back to explore the origin world. I thought Earth was just history, but now I realize it's my home too." Lyra laughed, a broken, disbelieving sound, and broke into tears again. This time, though, they weren't only grief, they were relief, wonder, and something brighter rising beneath the pain. Eve 9 placed a gentle hand on Lyra's shoulder. "You are not the last, you are the first of what comes next." Lyra exhaled shakily and leaned into Risa's embrace again, accepting comfort instead of collapsing beneath sorrow. Slowly, carefully, Eve 9 lifted Lyra from the pod and carried her out of the compartment. As they stepped through the rusted corridors of the ancient ship, Lyra clung to Risa's hand, the touch grounding her in a world she hadn't seen since before the stars swallowed her past. When they finally emerged into the open air, Lyra stopped, awestruck. The barren, broken landscape stretched endlessly before her. The wind lifted strands of her hair, and she stared through tears at the horizon. "I'm home," she whispered. Risa stood beside her. "Yes," she said quietly, "but this isn't the Earth you left." Lyra shook her head. "No, but maybe it's one that can rise again." Eve 9 stepped ahead of them, scanning the terrain with a new sense of purpose. "Not maybe," she said, "it will." The three of them stood together on the threshold of a world reborn through their existence alone, the last survivor of the past, the inheritor of the present, and the guardian who had waited 2,000 years for a human voice. The wind whispered around them, carrying dust across the hardened ground like scattered seeds waiting for spring. And for the first time since Earth fell silent, there were 3 living hearts standing upon it. The days that followed moved with a quiet rhythm, fragile but unmistakably alive. Lyra, still weak from centuries of stasis, spent most of her time adjusting to the world she had inherited, a world that felt both alien and achingly familiar. Risa stayed close, teaching her how to walk again under real gravity, how to breathe the thin air without panic, how to trust her body after so long suspended between life and death. Eve 9 watched over both of them, not with the cold vigilance of a machine, but with the steady, anchoring presence of someone who had finally found purpose after centuries of silence. At dawn of the 4th day, something changed. The spy, normally muted and colorless, shimmered faintly with streaks of pale gold. Lyra was the first to see it. She stood outside the broken hull of the ship, her past, wrapped in a blanket Risa had tailored from the remnants of cryolining. When the light touched her face, her eyes widened. "Is that?" Her whisper trembled with something between disbelief and longing. "Sunrise?" Risa joined her and followed her gaze. It wasn't a sunrise as the old Earth had known it. The atmosphere was too thin, the sky too fractured by millennia of collapse. But it was light, gentle, emerging, persistent, a new kind of dawn, a promise. Eve 9 analyzed the anomaly and confirmed what she already suspected. The archive's reactivation has triggered dormant environmental stabilizers, she said, her voice soft, almost reverent. Earth is beginning its first natural atmospheric cycle in over 2,000 years. Lyra's breath caught. So waking the archives, waking me, it changed the planet? Risa put a hand on her shoulder. Maybe it didn't change it, she said quietly. Maybe it allowed the planet to remember how to live again. Lyra closed her eyes, and for a moment she looked like the child who had stared up at the stars before the crash, afraid, hopeful, reaching for answers in a universe too big for her small hands. When she opened them again, she looked at EV9. What do we do now? Her voice was small, but steady. EV9 turned toward the horizon, scanning the long stretches of barren ground, the cracked basins where oceans once lived, the skeletal structures of ancient cities. Her sensors picked up faint flickers, heat signatures from deep within the earth, pockets of dormant microbial life waiting for warmth, seeds petrified but intact beneath layers of dust. We rebuild, she said. We restore. We begin again. Risa nodded firmly, her eyes shining. This is our world now, all 3 of us. Lyra hesitated, gripping the blanket tighter around herself. But 2 people? How can we bring humanity back? The fear in her voice was not just personal, it was ancestral, a species condensed to 2 breaths, 2 shadows standing on the bones of a dead civilization. Is that even possible? EV9 stepped closer. You misunderstand, she said gently. Risa is not the only human. Lyra blinked. What do you mean? Risa exhaled slowly. My colony, my people, they're not far. They've been expanding for generations, searching, learning. They don't know Earth can support life again. But when I came here, I wasn't the only explorer. There are others out there. Not many, but enough. Lyra stared at her, tears filling her eyes again. So, humanity survived? Risa nodded. Not as Earth remembered it, but yes, we're scattered, changed, not the same species you knew, but we're human. Lyra pressed a hand to her heart as if steadying its beating. Then Earth isn't alone. Not anymore, Risa whispered. Eve 9 looked between them and felt something shift inside her core, a realization that her long wait had not been in vain. She had been created to listen, to remember, to watch, but now she saw that memory had a purpose only when shared. She wasn't just the last witness to Earth's fall, she could be the first guardian of its rebirth. Over the next weeks, they built the first outpost. Eve 9 reactivated solar conduits buried deep beneath the soil, while Risa scavenged infrastructure from the ship's remains. Lyra learned quickly, her mind sharp despite the centuries she'd lost. She studied old maps, learned the changes in geography, and recorded the history she had missed. Sometimes she cried quietly, grieving the world she lost. Sometimes she laughed, discovering new tastes, new sounds, new moments that had never existed for her before. And sometimes she simply sat outside and watched the strange new dawns. At night, the three of them gathered around a small heat generator Risa repaired, its soft glow flickering like a campfire. Lyra would ask questions about the colonies, the stars, the stories humanity told after leaving Earth. Risa answered as best she could, and when she couldn't, Eve 9 filled the gaps with preserved data, weaving together the long, fractured history into something whole. One night, Lyra looked at Eve 9 with a quiet smile. "You waited for us," she said softly. "All this time, you waited." Eve 9 processed the words. She could have replied with calculations, with logs, with protocols. But instead, she said, "I waited because someone had to believe the end wasn't the end." She paused, "And because I wanted to hear your voice." Lyra reached out and touched the metal of her hand. "Then I'm glad I woke up." As the days became weeks, and the weeks promised years, the outpost began to hum with small signs of revival. The ground warmed, a trickle of water reappeared where ice had melted. Plants engineered for harsh colonies took root in the soil for the first time in 2 millennia. The world was still broken, scarred and fragile, but now it had 3 hearts beating upon it, 3 voices carried in the wind. One night, after surveying the revitalizing landscape, Evie 9 recorded a transmission, the first message Earth had sent in 2,000 years. She broadcast it into space, toward the stars Risa had come from, toward the colonies that had forgotten the sound of Earth's pulse. "This is Earth," she transmitted. "We are alive." Lyra and Risa stood with her as the message left the atmosphere, carrying hope across the void. And in the silence that followed, they felt something beyond them shift, like a future unfolding its first breath. Lyra leaned her head on Risa's shoulder, her voice a quiet promise. "Let's make sure Earth never falls silent again." Evie 9 looked at the 2 humans beside her, the past and the present, standing hand in hand, and finally understood what the future was meant to be. Not memory, not mourning, not silence, but beginning. And so, under a sky still learning how to glow again, the last witness, the returning heir, and the survivor of a forgotten tragedy began the long work of rebuilding a world that had waited for them, quietly, patiently, faithfully, for 2,000 years. Eve 9 stood at the edge of the crater where the sanctuary had once been buried, the newborn dawn spilling across the horizon in soft silver fire. The air was cold, sharp, nearly sterile, but the wind tasted faintly of moisture, actual moisture. a signal that the cloud-seeding arrays she'd repaired were finally waking the atmosphere again. Thin clouds drifted overhead, pale and trembling, as if the sky were learning how to breathe. Behind her, the valley hummed with early human voices, afraid, hopeful, overwhelmed. She listened as they whispered to each other, sharing names, fears, stories, and promises. The survivors, her survivors. For a moment, she closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel something she had never been programmed to process: pride. The audio logs of Earth's last days, once the most sacred burden she carried, now felt less like an ending and more like an inheritance finally handed back to its rightful owners. She stepped toward the cliff edge overlooking the growing settlement. What was once dust and collapsed glass was slowly transforming. Fresh structures made from scavenged alloys were rising from the rubble. Solar arrays blinked alive. Water drones hummed through the air like silver bees. A civilization was crawling out of the grave, one trembling limb at a time. Behind her, Leora approached quietly. "The people are ready," she said. "We have food reserves for 2 months, comms arrays for long-range scanning, and more volunteers every hour. We're building again." Eve 9 nodded. "You will suffer setbacks. You will lose people. You will argue and disagree. You will fall and rise 1,000 times." She turned to face Leora fully. "But that is what it means to be human." Leora swallowed, eyes shining. "We wouldn't have made it without you." "No," Eve replied softly. "You would have. I simply kept the door open long enough for you to return." Below them, a chorus of voices rose, the youngest survivors reciting the words Eve 9 had played for them the night before, Earth's final broadcast from ages long gone. It drifted across the wind like a ghostly lullaby. "If someday someone hears us, please remember we tried." Eve 9 felt the ancient transmission echo inside her core, the one she had replayed endlessly through 2,000 years of solitude. For the first time, it didn't feel like a wound, it felt like resolve. Leora looked up at her. "So what happens now?" Eve 9 stepped onto the panoramic scanner deck. Her frame shimmered faintly with gold as her internal reactors powered down from emergency mode into something gentler, sustainable, long-term, patient. "Now," she said, "I teach you everything I learned while you were gone." A low hum rose from the deck. A holographic interface spiraled open, a living map of Earth, flickering in shades of ultramarine and copper. Regions marked in red indicated old war sites. Regions in green showed places where seeds could still grow. Tiny blue nodes represented shelters she had built centuries earlier, containing tools and supplies she had once hidden for a humanity she feared would never return. But they had. "You prepared all this?" Leora whispered. "For you," Eve said, "for all of you. Earth has one final chance. We must not waste it." Leora nodded. "Tell us what to do." Eve touched the hologram. The projection expanded, flooding the cliff in cool light. "First, we rebuild the atmosphere, then the soil, then the water. We will repair what was broken and restore what was lost." She paused. "But the heart of Earth must come from you. Hope cannot be engineered. It must be chosen." Leora hesitated. "And you? Will you stay with us?" For a long moment, Eve 9 said nothing. Thousands of years alone had carved something deep into her, an endless corridor of silence, a wound shaped like a world that no longer existed. She had been built to listen, to mourn, to remember. But now humanity was here, alive, imperfect, fragile, real. Her purpose had changed. "I will stay," Eve 9 said, "as long as I am needed. But humanity must learn to stand without me." Leora smiled tearfully. "We will." Eve 9 turned back to the horizon. The wind shifted again, warmer now, carrying scents that had been absent for millennia: minerals, moisture, the faintest thread of ozone. Life. She raised her head as a soft drizzle began, thin and tentative, the first rain to fall on Earth in 600 years. 1,000,000 droplets touched the cracked soil. Steam curled. The air trembled. People ran from their shelters, laughing, crying, stretching out their hands as if trying to catch miracles falling from the sky. Eve 9 let the rain strike her metallic cheek. It left tiny streaks of water that shimmered like tears. "This," she thought, "is the sound I waited 2,000 years to hear." Not a human voice, not a distant broadcast, but the sound of a world waking again. Leora approached, lifting her hands to the sky in joy. "It's beautiful." "Yes," Eve said, "and it is only the beginning." The clouds swelled, thickened, and darkened into storm-heavy formations. Lightning cracked across the horizon, powerful and alive. The rain intensified, washing the dust of extinction from the earth, one trembling drop at a time. And for the first time in 2 millennia, Eve 9 accessed the section of her memory she had locked away to protect herself, the final message humanity sent the day Earth fell. She played it aloud, not as mourning, but as a benediction. "If hope survives, then so do we." Leora clasped her hand. "We're going to make it real." Eve looked out at the new world forming beneath the storm. "You already have." Then, as thunder rolled and rain washed the scars of centuries from the soil, Eve 9, last witness of the old world, first guardian of the new, finally allowed herself to believe the truth she had only dared to simulate. Humanity was home, Earth was alive, and the silence was gone forever. And after 2,000 years of silence, Earth finally answered back. The signal was not the end of humanity. It was proof that hope survives even in the deepest dark. What was built to remember became something more. What was broken began to breathe again. This is not a story about the end of the world. It is a story about beginning again. Thank you for listening, and until the next transmission, the signal remains. If this story moved you, subscribe and stay with us. More worlds are waiting.